Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message reads like this. Hello, how are you? Can you please post for me Brother Nashi as hidden identity? I am a woman who got married to her husband and we had our very beautiful wedding. This was somewhere in 2008. So in our church, what we do is that when you have fallen in love with a man, we are not allowed to get in a relationship. What a man is supposed to do is that you go to the church elders, then you tell them that you have fallen in love with such a lady. Then you will be called, you as the lady will be called by the elders of the church so that they can sit down with you. So this is what happened to me. This man that I finally got married to, at that time he was not even in my radar because he was someone that I thought of as a low class. I really wanted to be married to a man who could take care of me in praise and worship as I was, because at one point in time I was a leader in the praise and worship team. There was this other brother who was single and he was also in the praise and worship team. He really had a very good job, so I had my eyes on him. But when I was called the elders, then the elder cancelled me and told me that even though this man that was asking for my hand in marriage, yes, indeed, he was someone who was not well up in life, but we never know where God was going to take us to. I had to have a little bit of faith. And that man, my brother, when I got married to him, before we had walked away from church, partly because of some things that I ended up doing, he was someone who really loved the Lord and he believed that prayer will answer anything. And that is what happened, because after I had agreed to marry him, even though deep down in my heart I really had some regrets, but when I started to see that God used this man wherever you would go, there were miracles that were following him everywhere we would go. That is when I started to fall in love with my husband, for I knew that God had placed his grace upon his life. I wanted to be there the day when God will decide to make my future husband a millionaire. I didn't want to sit and regret when one day I'll be told that that man that he had once asked for my hand in marriage was now a millionaire. So I agreed. The thing that happened is that when this man went to the church elders asking for my hand in marriage, he didn't even have a single cent. When he was asked by the elder how much he had so that he can pay for my bride price, he said that he does not have anything. He have no money, but God willing, he was going to pay for my bride price. So I said, oh well. In my mind, I was telling myself that at least if that guy whom I had my eyes on, if he is that another brother in church, he had gone to the elders so that he can ask for my hand in marriage, maybe he was going to act up and come and propose love to me. But my brother, this husband of mine, before we had walked away out of church, he really had faith that could move a mountain, because it took him about 2 months out of the blue. That was when I was called back at the elder's house. When I entered into the elder's house, then they started praising the Lord. I didn't even understand what was really going on. That was when my future husband explained to me the miracle that had happened to him. He just said that the man who has given me this money, I'm not sure if this man is a human being. I think that this man is nothing but an angel. The man who was my future husband at that time said that he was on his way going to work and he had been praying for several days, asking for money from God. Then he came across this other man who was holding an okay plastic bag. Then he spoke with my husband after they had spoken, and he was asking my husband for some directions. After my husband had given that man the directions, then that man handed the okay shopping bag that he was holding in his hands to my husband, and he told my husband that when he has reached his workplace, he was supposed to find a place where he will be alone so that he can open that okay shopping plastic bag. And that was what my husband did. When he arrived at work, he quickly went into this other office that was vacant at that time. That was when he opened that plastic bag. Then he saw that there was money that was inside that plastic bag. Then he started to pray. When he prayed, he said that he had a small voice. It was a little whisper that was whispering to him, and the voice told him that he was supposed to use the money to marry me. When I heard this great news, I then took the decision to stick by my husband. And even the time when we started to prepare for our wedding, my brother, if I tell you that we did not even pay for our venue, something funny had just happened that we didn't even pay for that venue. After we had gotten married, things started to get very well in our life. Then out of nowhere, it was as if someone had switched off the light that was bringing miracles into my husband's life. Those miracles just disappeared. Then money started to disappear in the house. Money was not physically disappearing, but my husband, he then got fired from his job. Sometimes we would go for days without eating anything, only cooking porridge in the morning. Then late at night, that was when we would cook porridge again. And this was not the life that I had signed for. I started to argue with my husband, for I wanted him to do what other men were doing, going out there and hustle for their family. But my husband was someone who really thought that only working for another person was going to bring food on the table. What he will do each and every day was that he will get up, then he will say his prayer, then he will go around the industries with his CVs looking for any kind of a job that he will get. But late at night, he will come back without anything. At that time, my brother, Zim was so dysfunctional. There was nothing that was going good. Everyone was relying on hustling. And I told my husband that he was supposed to hustle the same way that other men were hustling for their families. But my man, he was so stubborn about this thing of praying and praying. And I was tired of praying. I didn't want to pray anymore. How could I pray when I was always hungry? I was devastated when we spent about 3 months struggling and I was growing thin. This man, when I had gotten married to him, I really had a good body. But after I had gotten married to him, then I started to grow thin. Even some of the people that knew me previously before I had gotten married to my husband, they thought that maybe I was HIV positive because of the way that I was getting thin. I was really devastated. So I decided to go back to our village where my parents were. When I went there, I had told myself that I want to get divorced to this man. Whilst I was there, that was when my husband called me and he told me that he had found a job. But since I had decided to divorce him, even though we were not legally divorced, he said that I should stay there in the village for a little bit so that he can sort out some things there in the city. At that time, we had realized that it was far much better to stay in the village than to live in the city, because everything in the city, if you want to buy something, then you need money. He said that we were supposed to buy some land so that you will be working in the city, whilst I'll be busy farming back in the village. When he said that he wanted me to become a farmer, I laughed, my brother. I laughed so much. My mother asked me why I was laughing so loud like this, me being a farmer. But I didn't tell my mom exactly what was happening, but I had a plan in mind. Now that he was staying in the city, I wanted to put a locking central on his manhood, because I was afraid that now that he was working, he will start to think of all the things, the way that I used to shout at him when he was still going around looking for a job opportunity. When I visited that witch doctor, I then told him that he was supposed to give me some charms so that my husband will not run away from me and will not start to sleep with other women back there in the city because of the way that I used to abuse him. That witch doctor looked at me and he told me that I had arrived at the right place, for he had this other thing that he called manhood African locking central system. He told me that it was the charm that he was going to give me so that my man's manhood will be locked. It can only be unlocked when you would have inserted it into my private parts. So I then was stripped naked and some herbs were then placed into my private parts. I was then told that for this locking system to be activated, I had to have sexual intercourse with my man within 3 days. My brother, at that time, I didn't have any money. I had to lie to my parents. I lied to my parents that I had received news that my husband had been admitted into the hospital. Someone had stabbed him and he was in the hospital. So I had to rush back to the city so that I can see him. My mom was really worried, for she loved her son-in-law. So I rushed back to the city, and when I arrived back in the city, my husband was surprised because at that time he didn't even have a proper bed. The place where he was staying at, it was just a matter of survival. But I knew what I had came here for, so I did what I had came here for. After we had slept together, I knew that the password had been inserted into his manhood, and it was time for me to return back to the village. So I returned back to the village. After I had returned back to the village, that witch doctor had told me that I was supposed to bring his underwear. And when I had returned back to the village with his underwear, I went and I visited that traditional healer. He then gave me a red sewing twine and a needle. Then he instructed me on how I was supposed to sew my man's underwear. And after I had done that, I was told to go and throw those items in the river. Then that witch doctor told me that my husband can only be released from this manhood African traditional locking central system the day that I will die. If I am still alive, then his manhood can only be unlocked after it has entered into my private parts. My brother, this is the thing that I did. So after I had visited that witch doctor, then the Spirit of the Lord, I think it then left my husband and it left me and my husband. Since that year that I did all of these things, me and my husband, we have never set our foot again in a church building. Hey, dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from our dear sister after God Fear Women.